Good to see you guys. Welcome. And a couple of quick things up front. Make sure you kind of hit the joy box before you go. Complete worship. If you're going to woo, make sure you do it. That Chase Canoa back there. So you can sneak a Connect card or something to make it look like you're giving something. It'd be fantastic. Just a couple of announcements. One would be we're going to Thursday nights only for 6 weeks. So you need to help me communicate that. You need to help the church communicate that. Starting the 18th. So we have a Sunday Mother's Day deal going on. We're going to meet here. Have an incredible time of finishing up the book of Philippians. I think Philippians has been pretty neat, huh? And so then we're finished with that, though, and then we're going to celebrate that and Mother's Day together on that Sunday. If Arnold Park doesn't look like something from like the book of Genesis and Noah, we'll go there and do it. If the park is closed, we'll do it here. So that's the 14th, and then starting on that Thursday for the next 6 weeks after that, we'll only meet on Thursday night. The first 3 weeks of that will be really cool because Corey Johnston's coming from Heights to give you a 3-week series on Noah. I thought that was appropriate that we do that for the shape that Arnold's in. It'd just be fantastic. We're going to do rock monsters, the whole thing. Anybody that's seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So I love the rock monsters. Very heretical, but funny as can be. So that kind of gives you a idea of what's going on. When we finish Noah, we're actually going to do 3 weeks on just straight saturation revival. What would it look like for God to get excited enough to save our whole city? That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? So we'll roll that out biblically, what that might look like, and tell some amazing stories at the same time. So tonight, I just need you to pray for me as we roll through this. You got a very unrighteous pastor walking up here in the righteousness of Christ to teach you his amazing word. And so just kind of pray as that rolls along. So let me back up into last week and give you some context. If you were not, either one of those sermons last week, if you were not here, just astonishing. Lance Smith was amazing last Thursday night, and we were blessed by having Mac Davenport here on Sunday, and Mac taught the paint off the walls on that passage for us, and I'm going to reference a couple things he said tonight. But just some context for you. Paul is in prison as he's writing this. Remember, he has done everything that God has asked him to do. So you got a little conundrum right there, right? He would legitimately have some questions. He's been completely obedient. He's done everything God has asked him to do, and he's rotting away in a prison cell chained to a guard. You'd have some questions, wouldn't you? Like, seriously, I deserve this? He was human, you know. He wasn't Jesus. He knows Jesus, but he wasn't Jesus. And so I'm just astonished at Paul's attitude, especially as we go into tonight. Like there's almost like a message there. Obedience equals prison with a question mark behind it. You ever felt like that? You felt like you were rolling pretty well, and it felt like your life just didn't make sense according to that which you were giving God. While he's giving good counsel to the church at Philippi, he's also counseling himself. Paul is counseling himself. He's preaching the gospel to himself as he's counseling the church. That's a great habit, by the way. And Mac Davenport told us stories about trying to deal with the beginning of Philippians chapter 4, if you're not here on Sunday, after losing 2 children to death. He and his wife have been pregnant twice, have lost 2 children, and so he starts processing the verses that he's preaching through that lens. This is recent. Mac Davenport looks like he's about 12. I'm wondering, how are you married and have had this life circumstance? It's gripping stuff. But he's had to deal with this verse, right? It's Philippians 4. We back up into their sermon, 4:4. Rejoice in the Lord always, and I will say rejoice. In the middle of losing 2 children. That's just process that for a second. You've probably got some similar circumstances in your life, maybe, that you're processing with that command. That's a command. That's an imperative. That's not like an option. But here's what we see the Bible telling us constantly. Just listen to this close. The world is hard. But we just sang it, right? Christ is better. Joy comes when we see Christ is better. Christ is eternal. This is temporal. Joy comes when we see Christ is better. Anybody else besides me remember singing that little verse? I remember I was 6 years old. Church was no fun when I was 6, if nothing else, because you dressed up to go to church in those days. And my mother thought it was neat to heavily starch white shirts and put them on me when I was 6 years old to go to church. And I literally felt like I was encased in some kind of itchy, scratchy tomb. Like I was a mummy that was just there was nothing pleasurable about that at all. But we would show up there and they would teach us these little ditty songs. Like, we think that things get repetitive now, but how about rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Anybody ever sing that when you were little, like Sunday school song? Everybody was like tripping out on that. Yeah, right. So here's what my observation of that. If you didn't sing that, you didn't go to a good church. I can tell you that. What the heck were you doing? Maybe I'm just old, right? Mike, maybe we're the only ones that are familiar with that. But here's my observation, that it was easy to sing as a kid. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. We sing that, right? And we go, well, that's easy as a kid, right? I mean, think about that. When I was 6 years old, my toughest decision on a daily basis was whether I was going to ride bikes with my friends or play baseball in the side yard. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. It's easy to sing, man. Second toughest decision was I'd saved a little money working for my dad, and so I was going to choose between buying baseball cards with bubble gum. Remember baseball cards with bubble gum in them? That bubble gum was the worst tasting thing in the history of mankind, but we wanted the baseball cards and ate the bubble gum just because you rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice. I had to choose between that or a Hot Wheel car. Like that was angst for me at 6. Which is going to get bought with that little bit of money that I'd saved. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Bubble gum. That was easy, rejoice, man. And then the world started kicking my teeth in a little. Anybody remember those days where you went from like this age of innocence to the world kind of started kicking at you a little? Literally sometimes. The world came and got ugly with me. Like I had this really solid life at home. Some of you did not have a solid life at home. Your parents are just crazy. You just grew up with crazy. I didn't grow up with that. My parents were really solid, but I had some crazy in my neighborhood. And the kids were cruel. Like, I was not a real attractive kid. I weighed about 32 pounds, and about 30 pounds of that was lips. And so there was a lot of jokes that could be made about that. I mean, anybody ever say Rudy off of the old Fat Albert cartoon? Like that was Rudy, right? I mean, it was just bad, right? And so I got dinged up a lot. One time I was 0-64 in fights. 0-64. I mean, nobody puts that on your Facebook page, right? I was 0-64 in fights. Got my teeth knocked in a little bit. It's funny how everybody wanted to fight when I was 92 pounds, and maybe not so much later. But for all of us as adults, here's the message behind that. It becomes harder to sing, right? As we get a little mileage on us with some difficulties, it becomes harder to sing. And I'm looking around the room, and I can name a couple of difficulties that I know each and every one of you deal with or have dealt with, that you would go, yeah, I'm not singing that today. Because people start abandoning and dying. What's up with people dying? Like, don't you know I love you? What's wrong with you dying? And then some others that are still living, we kind of wish they were dead because they've abandoned us. And that just seems to outweigh any good. And so once in a while, I'll catch my wife eating some kind of comfort food in the house, like her mom used to, when they were all nervous around their house, her mom would make something called salmon patties. I knew it was really nervous around our house this last week because salmon patties were frying in the pan. I don't even know how you make a salmon patty. I don't know it comes out of a can, and it's just weird, right? But we start doing things for comfort, just to get by those difficult times, those nervous times. And I think sometimes we just kind of wish we could go back to baseball in the yard, right? Or bikes with the friends. It'd just be fun to go back and be a kid again. And I watch our kids with all kinds of angst, like they are just nervous about their next day, and I'm always wanting to go, man, just slow down and ride a bike, dude. Like, just take advantage of what you've got right now. You don't have to produce anything. Slow down and enjoy yourself. Rejoice in the Lord always. Sing it with me. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Some of you can't even mouth it. It's not because you can't sing. Maybe you weren't led very well, I don't know, but the imperative, the command still lingers. Yes? No matter how much you want to sing that or don't want to sing because of your life circumstances, the command still lingers. Paul was in prison, was not coming out. He's starting to get the impression that he's not coming out if you read his writings closely. And he's singing. And I just got to say, okay, he's better than me at that point, right? I would like to say I was there. He's just better than me right there. Maybe you're there. You're better than me too. I want what he has, though, but I'm just not as faithful. I know the truths, though. I can tell you those, and we're going to do that. Joy is available in all circumstances. I know that. I can teach that. You believe it? I'm asking you right now. That's not a rhetorical question. Do you believe it? That joy is available in all circumstances. But here's what it takes. It takes what the Bible calls a renewal of our mind. Because we're trained to think a certain way. And Jesus comes and flips every way that we think in our sin nature. He's still flipping mine. Are you tracking with that? So if you're not there, it's okay to say he's still flipping mine. But stay at the table with him. Don't run from him as he's renewing your mind. We have to think differently. I have to preach this to myself all the time because I'm a spoiled little baby of the family. My sister says, you've never had the angst that we had early. You know, anybody got older siblings? Like quite a bit older? Like they're just always going, baby, you've had it so easy. And she's a little bit right. I'm spoiled. Had a charmed life early. But Jesus promised us some teeth kicking, right? He said the world's going to come kick your teeth in. We don't like those passages. We don't post those on Facebook, right? We don't post those on social media. The world's going to come kick your teeth in, Jesus promised. Not from him, by the way. He had his teeth kicked in so you wouldn't have to. Just so you know, just to remind you. And Paul's been telling his beloved church that joy is so available regardless of that teeth kicking if they will stand firm in the gospel. That's been the message of chapter 4 here. Stand firm. I get a little perturbed when I watch people say, let's go to battle. I don't see a whole lot of go to battle terminology in the Bible. I see a whole lot of stand firm. I see Ephesians 6, put on the armor of God and stand. Stand firm in your faith. Beautiful passages in Isaiah where God says, you can stand firm. Just stand firm. I've given you all the weaponry for the front. I'll take care of your rear guard. Do we trust him? Confidently stand firm. And we're about to see how much it helps when devoted friends come along. By the way, you have good friends if your friends don't show up at a pity party. If your friends show up with the gospel. Yes? You want friends that show up with the truth, with the gospel, with possibly rebuke, with love, with care. You don't want them to come with a pity party, and you for sure don't want Job's friends to show up. You wouldn't be having all this angst if you weren't such a sinner. You don't want those clowns. But Paul is about to talk about his friends and how well they came alongside of him. He loves this church because they didn't come with a pity party. They didn't come like Job's friends. They came with the gospel to him. And he starts here in verse 10 with this for tonight's verse. He says, I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. The Philippian church would love to come rescue Paul. imprisoned with the most powerful military force of many centuries, right? And they would like to come get him out. And I think sometimes we just watch too many movies when we're in the depths of despair, and we kind of just think that Batman or Spider-Man or Rick Grimes or Chuck Norris or Mom and Dad or somebody's coming. Stone Cold Steve Austin, Josh says. Somebody's coming. They're just coming to get us out of prison. We can count on them. Well, the Philippians church wanted to be the Spider-Man for Paul. But the truth is, sometimes like Paul, our season of life, listen to me close, our season of life is to learn how to find joy in the midst of dealing with prison. Let me run that back through for you. We are anticipating rescue in this life. And sometimes God says, that's not how we're going to track this out. I'm not going to send the cavalry in to pull you out. I'm not going to send the superhero. I'm not sending mom and dad. I need you to find joy in the midst of prison. But it's nice to know that this amazing church is for Paul. Don't you enjoy that when you just know that people are for you? I mean, like really for you? Not these pseudo friendships that we create, but really for you. That's what he's saying here. I'm sure they've encouraged him with the same Jesus that he preached to them for their salvation. I bet you they have sent letters that said, I know it's hard, man, but the Jesus that you preach to us is right. And then Paul starts teaching in the next verse. Verse 11. Not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation. If you have a Bible, if you have any way to underline whatever situation. I am to be content. I have to underline that because that whatever there's rough. Paul says, I'm not whining. My situation's awful. There's a lot of places I would rather be. But I'm declaring to you that contentment is the status of my being. And as we mature into our Christ-likeness, honestly, this is one of the hardest issues for American Christians to deal with. It's not so for my friends in the Mumbai or Bangkok slums. I go and visit them and almost wish I was them. Anybody who has ever done mission work in true poverty comes home and has a little distaste and hate for Americans. Because we're not content with anything. It's hard for us to deal with this verse because we have plenty. So our big idea tonight is this. If Jesus Christ and his complete work on our behalf is enough, we just sang it, he's better, he's enough. If it is enough, we will not desire more of anything else except him. That's basically what Paul's saying to us. Contentment will come. Paul has an understanding that his promises in this world include some food. God has promised food. God has promised some clothing. God has promised some shelter. But much more than that, Paul knows that his basic human needs are met by the gospel better than anything else. What are those basic human needs? That's what we're going to talk about here for just a minute. They are to be known, to be loved, and to belong. If you took almost every action of your life that you make on a daily basis, it is driving towards one of those basic human needs. They were given to you. That's not sinful, by the way. I'm not decrying any sin there. I'm saying those were given to you, to basic human needs to go find. And what I'm declaring to you tonight is that they are perfectly covered by the gospel. They're perfectly covered in the cross of Christ. So contentment comes because I have a recognition that that which God has built into me to go seek has been completely handled for me. That's what we say. When you say, I believe in Jesus, let me just say this, man. This is not in the script. When you say, I believe in Jesus, that's what you're saying. You're saying, I believe that Jesus has fulfilled every basic human need for me. So if I can say that, then contentment can come. This verse that seems so hard for us can come because you don't see the things that we're complaining about on a daily basis as American listed up here. That's not where we're not content. So can we take a second on each one of those? Why has social media become such a phenom? I believe it's because we were born with a soul that has a desire to be known. If you just took what they tapped into there, is that we have this soul that has a desire to be known. Even the strongest of introverts, as a matter of fact, they love social media. Introverts love social media because they can feel like they're getting that need met in their privacy somewhere. And the Bible says that all humans are meticulously formed in their mother's womb for the purpose of revealing God's glory. To accomplish that, here's what we know. God knows us deeply. When it starts talking about that in Psalm 139 and says, I formed you meticulously in your mother's womb, it's because I know every molecule in your body, God says. You want to be known? Just come and experience me, he says. I mean, that's a strong knowing. And your Creator throughout Scripture says, I continue to know you. I know every thought that you have. I know the deepest recesses of your heart, soul, and mind. And we hear that and we go, gosh, I can't hide anything from God. And it feels guilty and it feels dirty. And that's why the gospel has to be applied so that you start enjoying the fact that God knows everything about you. Because even if it's sinful, that's covered, that's righteous, it's good, it's been made pure. But we don't believe that. And so we waller around in not believing that we're known in a good way. Does that make sense? That's what the cross brings. God knows how much in every way, and how much I sin in every way, and yet I receive good, not punishment. Despite our shortcomings, Jesus wants to know us. You understand that, right? We think we mess up and God says, I don't want to know you today. Because that's what we do, right? I mean, that's how we react to somebody hurting us. We go, I don't want to know you today. And he says, you didn't shock me with that. Jesus took care of that. I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. So when it feels like no human knows me, listen to this. Some of you need to make this like the banner over your mirror every morning. When it feels like no human knows me, Jesus does. The search to be known is completely accomplished at the cross. And then second, to be loved. It is not too much to ask to be loved. A desire to be deeply loved and to love was placed into every human being as a core entity of who we are. The human soul was constructed to purely give love and receive love. But man, sin is jacked with that. But Jesus is in the love business. Right? He is in the love business, and he's in the restoration business. God so loved the world that Jesus came to make his love known. It hurts me to hear Christians say that they are not loved. That hurts me. I hear Christians say they're lonely, and I hear Christians say that they're not loved just because people are treating them badly. And I get it confused too, though. But as we take communion today, my challenge to you is taste the bread. When you taste the bread, taste the fact that the body represents love for you. When you taste the juice, you're tasting the fact that the blood represents forgiveness and good love for you. For God so loved you that he went to a cross. And please feel loved. God himself came down to express more love than we can imagine. So we'll become content in the arena of love when we really sense how much he loved us at the cross. Content. Jesus gave and gives love where it makes no logical sense whatsoever. So my question tonight is, can you feel it? Do you sense it here tonight? That's what the whole night's about. You will not find contentment until you find yourself thoroughly loved by Jesus. And then to belong. Honestly, most of the time when this passage is preached, it's declared that we need to repent of our materialism. Pastors will start screaming, you're not content because you want things. You need your comfort idols. You pay too much attention to your first world American problems. But at a deep level, those things that the pastors are yelling about are so that people will see us as cool and accept us into a club because we want to belong. Most of the time when we're not content with stuff, it's because we think we need a little better stuff so that somebody will want to have us in the club. How much more pure is it that the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus gains us access into the ultimate acceptance? You want to appreciate the cross tonight? Get some kind of essence around your brain that says, I was kicked out, completely out of the family. I mean, completely out of the family. I mean, like to hell out of the family. Jesus comes, hangs on a cross, resurrected to invite me back in to the ultimate family. One that never dies. One that lives together with him in pure goodness for all eternity. That's... You want to belong? You want to belong to something that matters? You belong. Feel it. Realize it. Stop searching for somebody else's approval when you belong to the ultimate family. It's a pretty dysfunctional family sometimes, but it's bound in pure love. I mean, we belong to this. 1 Peter, look at this. Here's your identity. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession. How about that? Like God rejects, and then he goes, I want you with me for all time. You are my people. Why? So that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness and into his marvelous light. We declare his glory. We don't increase his glory. We declare that which is. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. How can we read that and go, I don't belong to anything? I need to search for more belonging. That's where we need to repent. That's down at the deep level. The idea that I just need a cooler car is the outward act of the need for repentance. Lack of contentment seems a bit ridiculous after reading that. I mean, good gracious, we've been given the keys to the kingdom. Yes? That's what I just read. Why? So that we may proclaim how great he is. Now you are God's people, once an enemy of God, brought into a family, adopted by grace. But the question is that enough? In our hearts, souls, and minds, is that enough? Regardless of our circumstances. Well, he continues, verse 12. Paul says, I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. Paul was giving a little resume here. He's showing how he can speak to this. He has gone from being rich and famous. Paul had everything, to now being lowly, homeless, and chained to a Roman guard with no earthly comfort. Can you imagine what it was like just to go to the bathroom chained to some Roman clown? No dignity left in Paul. From fine linens to floating on a board in the ocean for days, to getting bit by a snake, and now to be chained to a Roman guard. One glorious thing about your life sucking on occasion is when you come through on the other side with your faith intact, you can start saying some of this stuff with Paul. You can say, I've known great highs and I've known great lows. Hard to speak on contentment until you have nothing, by the way. Is that all right? Just on a logical basis? I mean, I look at some rich cats driving by me in their BMW with their heated seats, computer all around them, functioning, living large. I'm thinking that they're not having any trouble with contentment right now. Matter of fact, they're over content. Happens to pastors like this. Like, here's my first month pastoring. Got to lead a young man named Jeremy to the faith. Jeremy, here's the gospel, man. Here's what Jesus has done for me. Jeremy says, I want to repent and believe in the gospel. I trust him. We baptized Jeremy. Less than 2 weeks later, his baby is murdered. So we go from the greatest experience a Christian can ever have for him and for me, leading him to Christ, him meeting Christ, to dealing with his baby that came and stayed with Kelly and me. I can still smell Izzy's hair in my mind. This baby is murdered by his mother. And so I get a call on Thanksgiving Day. I'm sitting down with my family. This is the life of a pastor. And I drive to the hospital, and I've got this still warm head in my hand with a giant hole in it, knowing that he's actually brain dead. So there's warmth and yet gone. So the high of previously leading the daddy, that's the ultimate high in life for me, by the way. Some of you are about to get baptized, and I live for that. And then I have to walk a 22-year-old kid through not only a murdered baby, but the fact that his mama did it. Come on, man. I mean, like, preached a funeral with a coffin that was that big. About that high. It's about as low as it gets, isn't it? I know how to be brought low. And then verse 13 is going to come up. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. What do you hear there? What do you hear there? That you can be a great mom because you know Christ? That you can accomplish your career goals because Christ makes you awesome? That you can survive your problems because Christ makes you stronger than your enemy? You can go to battle? That I really think I'm supposed to have some money because I know Jesus? I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Last week, Lance Smith said that one of the biggest travesties in the church world is that often we read the Bible in a single verse out of context, right? So if you walked into multitudes of homes all over the United States of America, you would find T-shirts and coffee mugs with that verse isolated. And the problem is that folks buy those, sometimes believing that knowing Jesus makes them Superman, a supermodel, or a Fortune 500 superstar. God will come alongside my dream and do all things because he strengthens me. At the end of the day, if you go to the depths of why somebody has that coffee mug sitting in their shelf, that's why. And that's out of context. That's not an ad for Jesus steroids to be applied to the kingdom of me. Read the context. Paul says, when I am low and in need of encouragement and strength, when I am strong and in need of humility, here is the secret. He says there's a secret, and I know it. And you need to be reminded of it tonight. I trust Christ. I trust the rock. I trust the cross. I trust the resurrection. Joy comes when pressed in faith. Joy comes when pressed, not when easy in faith, when pressed in faith. Level-headed, even keel, stable becomes the norm when emotional or successful, in plenty or need. In other words, if I'm hungry, I can feel joy because Christ is great, not because his strength will take me to Applebee's. Are you tracking the difference of that? I mean, it's like the difference between the true gospel and everything that we would like for the gospel to be. If I'm in need, I can feel joy because Christ provides what I need. Food will come, but for me, it might have onions in it. Anybody that knows me, I'd rather take a beating than eat some onions. Some more teeth kicked out. But living bread will satisfy. Some of you, I think, are processing here right now. You thought, man, this is the night that we hear, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This is going to be awesome. And I think you're a little dour right now because I want to teach you the verse correctly. Living bread will satisfy. If I'm crushed, I can feel joy because Christ restores. I can do all the things that Christ asks of me. That's really what he's saying here. I can do all the things which Christ asks of me. Humility, joy in suffering, reconciliation, contempt. Any of those things fun? Any of those things I just listed fun? I can do all of those things because Christ has done them for me. That's what he's saying. Because I'm trusting the trustworthy one. I've set my feet upon the rock. I've built my house upon the rock. We can do all things. We can do all things through Christ. This is the secret. Here's the secret for you. We can do what he did. We can love the unlovable. We can forgive the unforgivable. How about just this one? We can submit to the Father. How about just that one? We can bring glory out of less than glorious situations. I can do all things. In context, I can face prison, and I can face lack of position. I can face physical limitations. I can face pain, murdered babies, the loss of loved ones, 2 children, as Mac showed us last Sunday, and be content. Beyond just content, I can feel joy. How? How? Because Christ is that great. He's just that great.